Our next speaker is someone who is driving innovation at one of the biggest names in tech. Tanya Dixit of Generative AI Solutions, architect at Google. Tanya has led machine learning initiative at companies like Crayon, working across Vertex AI and Kubeflow. And she is passionate about responsible AI and how it is shaping the future of our work. If anyone have attended last year DevFest, I assume that you have heard Tanya talking about responsible AI. Today, Tanya will show us how to stop prompting and praying and start architecting with AI instead. So please join me welcoming Tanya Dixit. Yay!
Thanks, everyone. Just let me share my screen. Awesome. Okay, so I want to start with what are some of the things I hear a lot. I hear a lot that people say AI tools do not seem smart enough right now. Or I'll start using AI when it gets a little bit better. Thanks. Or right now, I'm not going to use AI because it might replace me. Like these thoughts are kind of unhelpful when it comes to what you want to do, like how you want to move forward in this more and more like AI-driven world. And all of these statements avoid responsibility. I know the thoughts behind these statements because I actually sometimes have them as well. It's a little bit uncomfortable because all of our workflows are changing. What we are doing is really changing, and it's almost like we're figuring out what the purpose is, like what our purpose is in this more and more AI-driven world, because a lot of us, like me, we derive our purpose from our work, how well we're able to do certain things. And now we have this tool which is able to do a lot of things that we do well. So like it can be really uncomfortable. And it's always hard leaving your comfort zone. I feel like I'm really lazy when it comes to trying out new things. And I've had to try out multiple tools in this last year and then, like figure out what works for me, what doesn't work for me. So the way I see it is on a spectrum of I will use AI blindly for everything and give it just like, blind instructions, to the spectrum, to the other end of the spectrum, which is, I will not use AI for anything. There is an optimal workflow that lies somewhere in the middle. And here, today, I'm going to talk about that. This workflow works for me. There are so many other things you can do and explore, but these are some of the learnings that I have. And the other thing I want to say, which I hope stays with you, is we don't wait for AI to evolve. The aim is like we evolve with it. And we actually shape the direction of how these tools are going to be used and how these tools are even going to be made. So today, I'm going to talk to you about this playbook that I've built. Why am I, who am I to talk about this? Well, I'm a solution architect at Google. I work on new technologies almost every day. I have to learn new stuff almost every day. I've spent countless hours figuring out how to productionize agents for some of our customers. I currently am juggling like 5 to 7 projects, actually like 6 projects right now, including work and side projects. And right now I'm on a quest to become more productive, more prolific. So I think I can say a few things about this. All right, let's talk about some of the anti-patterns. Some of the anti-patterns that I've seen are the first thing is the delegation trap, where you're giving everything to the LLM, you're treating it as an oracle, or you're treating the tools as an oracle and just letting it do its thing without really interrupting or without really engineering some of the context that you provided. The problem with that is, even though some of the tools that we use are marketed to us like, you just click a button, go grab a coffee, and then it's done for you. Right now, it doesn't really work like that. You really need to do some of the things, when you're trying to productionize stuff, you really need to, I would say, like guide it along the way, Then the second trap is the dependence trap, which is basically using one tool for everything. I continuously change tools as as new versions get released. I even use like multiple tools for the same thing. I'll give an example. When I need to learn something new, I go use deep research with Gemini, with Claude, as well as with GPT. And I read like these 3 research reports, and I actually try to go through these research reports. These are like super comprehensive. Takes some time, but actually saves me a lot of time because it has crawled. Like if you think about it, the information presented in these reports has come from at least 600 to 700 links or sources that have been crawled. And it also helps me verify some of the information that I'm getting because I'm like getting it from multiple sources. Then the other trap I see people fall into is the detachment trap, which is waiting for AI to improve. And that's it's kind of easy to see that it's not very helpful because to actually get better, you need to use these tools. You need to be in the game to win the game, right? So I would highly recommend just like start trying all of these tools and then like figure out a workflow for yourself. Okay, so let's talk about what my current workflow looks like. So as I told you, I start with deep research. This helps me get a broad understanding of the thing that I'm trying to do. So I'll give an example. Let's say I want to build a voice AI application, right? And I have never built this. So I'll do deep research on what is the current voice AI stack for some of the startups, for some of the companies that are already doing this. What's the voice AI stack for Google, for for some of the competitors. I do all of that research, and then try to read and learn and gather all these insights, right? Then comes the designing part. So once I've understood, like, okay, these are the moving parts of this, how do I actually design and architect a system? So that's the second bit. Now, you'll see a star next to it. I'll tell you why I have a star here. But yeah, so the design part is system design. Also, if I'm designing or building an end-to-end application, it's the user journeys. What are some of the features I want? How are people going to use this? And then I start putting this all together. Now, it's really important. At this stage, I kind of move away from AI, and I go back to my basics. I basically go on paper and pen and like actually build that myself. Like think about it. It helps me to think, and it helps me to sort of absorb all the things that I've learned or read in the previous step. It's super important. That's why I have a star here. You actually, like even in this workflow, you'll see where it's important for you to go back to humans or go back to the way things were done before, just for your own self, for your own learning. Because sometimes you create a code base, and then you don't even know what's in that code base. It's very, very hard to debug or to add features to or even to validate such a code base. And it becomes really important when you're productionizing something and when things go wrong, and a customer comes back to you and says that, oh, wow, how did that happen? And you're like, I have no clue if AI did it, right? So yeah, at this point, there's a lot of design happening. And then I try to put that on paper and then try to put it on some .md files, which I'll show you a bit later. Then the next step is AI review and critique. Then I go back to AI and then ask it to attack my architecture and attack the thought process that I have. At this point, it's almost like a review, but with AI. So you know how you do like an architecture review with some of your peers? It's basically doing an architecture review with the AI. And then thinking about some of the questions that even someone you're going to co-build this with, or someone like a customer could ask you that, oh, why are you doing this? Why should we use WebRTC? Why can't we just use WebSockets? Things like that. So yeah, here you get your trade-offs. You get some of your test cases because you know what are some of the things you need to be worried about. For example, the level of noise. Like how would you test noise in your voice system? Or what are some of the libraries that can offer you inbuilt noise suppression, where you need to write your own. So things like that. What happens when the network is not as good? Like what happens to the application? Where are you going to deploy it, on the phone or on web browser? So things like that. And then you kind of finalize your system design for the meantime before going forward. And then the next step is actually building it. So this step is very important because now you know what you want to build. You don't want to build all of it together, like at once. Even though you can, like right now we have sub-agents. Let's say Claude Code allows us to use sub-agents to build everything together. But I would highly recommend you not do that when you're starting the project. Why? Because I've seen that the models tend to over-engineer at various points in your workflow. So to keep the reins tight, I would highly recommend you start with one feature at a time initially. Once you have a good code base that's stable, you can actually go for like sub-agents and do things in parallel. But to start with one feature at a time, keep the reins tight. Like, this is exactly what I want you to do. So give really good instructions, give really good context, and we'll see how we can do that. And know exactly what you're building and know how to test it, because that's very important. And then next step is collaborate and repeat. So at this point, I would generally go to some of my colleagues and then, again, stress test it, show it to someone what I've built, and then sort of have a conversation with someone. This really helps me, because sometimes what might happen is I might be in an echo chamber and then not looking at some of the, I might have missed some tools, or I might have missed some trade-offs, or someone might have done something better. So talking to other humans is really, really important and really helpful. That also helps me validate my process. It helps me update some of the things that I've done, update my design or my process, and then test and repeat. So this is currently my workflow. Then this is a repo structure that I don't follow for all of my projects, but it's a superset of some of the things that I've done. So it's not something that I would recommend to do for every project, because it's an overkill. But I'd like to show you some of the things from the start. So look at the architecture folder. Basically, that's where I would put some of the things like what's the problem statement, what are some of the requirements, what my system design looks like, what are some of the trade-offs. This helps me document all of the things, all of the decisions that I've made. So it's almost like a decision log, and it's almost like basically writing everything down. It really helps when you want to update something, or when you want to look back and see and even test some of the functionality. Then there's this steering folder inside the agent folder. I wanted you to look at these rules. So here are here what we put is we put some of the coding guidelines that we as a team have agreed on. So for our team, we just put some of the standards, some of the coding styles, some other MD files as well. Then the context file we'll just look at later, the context folder. On the second, in the second column, you have the tech stack docs. So these docs they've really helped me, because I tried two methods. One is just adding an MCP server for documentation of certain, of the tech stack that I want to use. I did not find that as effective as just putting all the documentation as a .md file inside my repo directly. And how can you gather that? There is a really good website, Context 7. It actually gives you up-to-date documentation for most of the, basic tech stack that we use for projects. So it has I think it has for ADK, it has React, it has LangGraph, Next.js. It has a lot, actually. So yeah, I just put it in my tech stack docs for that particular project, whichever tech stack I'm using. And then my agent, the IDE that I'm using, it can refer to it anytime. So it just helps me a lot. OK, so I'm going to move on and go to some of the patterns. So how do we actually use these tools effectively? What can a workflow for an engineer look like? There are 4 patterns that we're going to discuss today: Scratchpad, clean slate, onboarding, and reflection. These are, I've given them fancy names, but these are small things that I do every day in my workflow. So let's see how that goes. OK, so I'll start with the onboarding pattern. So let's say I don't know something. I need to learn something new, or I need to learn a new library, use a new library for a use case. So what I do is I'll give it a prompt. So you have the prompt on the right side. It's a very, it's a simple prompt that I generated using Gemini. And basically what it's saying is, you're an onboarding assistant. Help me understand this repo. Help me use this based on the examples or based on the examples either in the repo or like a samples repo, and then tell me how I can actually use it in my project. So what does this pattern help you do? It basically gets you onboarded on a new repo really fast, creates some context for the next step, and it helps you to learn from samples. You can get going really fast. This actually ran for like 3 or 4 minutes, and it gave me these two things. One was the learnings.md, which tells me about the repo. So this is the ADK, the Agent Development Kit from Google. So I don't know if you can see this. It might be a bit difficult to see. But what it's doing is it's talking about the core classes and protocol and some of the control flow. So it's basically telling you about how ADK is written, what are the principles behind it. And one thing I always use, and I give this prompt as well, is tell me what the engineer might have thought while building this repo. Like, what are some of the things that might have run through their head? Like, so it helps me identify some good patterns. I only do this for repos that I really respect and I really want to either replicate or learn the patterns for. So, for example, ADK was really nice to do this for. So it's a great learning experience to do that, actually. And then the second thing it gave me is min agent.py. Basically, like a minimum agent is an example that it creates so that I can get started with it. Because once you get started, you actually get the ball rolling. So you get the courage to make changes, and that's where we need to go. So like in 10 to 15 minutes, you actually can start with any repo, even any language if you think about it. So if you're actually starting out with a new language, this is a great way to get over that fear, that initial hurdle of, oh, I don't know anything about it. Well, now you know. Like, you can actually use AI to run something and to get an output, and you don't even have to know what's going on, right? So that's, and you, if you want to know what's going on, you have the learnings.md, or you have an MD file that can teach you what's going on. All right, let's look at the Scratchpad pattern. So basically, it's like a working memory of how while you're building the code base, it's a working memory of how it's evolving. It's basically writing down while the model is, let's say, making changes or creating a file. It's basically taking a step back, writing down why some changes are required, what's the plan for making those changes, and documenting it in a .md file. That's Scratchpad MD could look like one file for the entire project, or it could be multiple files, depending on how you want to structure it. So I'll show you how I structure it a bit later. So what you're doing is you're avoiding jumping straight into the code, and you're laying down the thinking behind some of your changes or your features properly. This helps you rein in over-engineering before it even starts, right? So you're very clear what's happening. It's like really absolutely crystal clear. So one of the ways you could do this for code reviewing, for example, is instead of just typing fix this code, this is the error I'm getting, you can actually say list the potential bugs, rank them, write a plan, produce the patch, and then verify the test. Like, you can just write these down, and even for these you can have intermediate Scratchpad, either files or text. Then let's talk about some another example, basically in the design discussion. So while you're designing some of your, when you're doing the system design, you can give it a prompt like show your step-by-step thought process in the Scratchpad, final answer in a separate section. So this allows you to look at the model reasoning and keep it very transparent. Yeah, it's a very simple pattern, but very powerful. Okay, let's look at the next one, which is the reflection pattern. So this I've used a lot. So sometimes what happens is the model might be biased to do some things a certain way, and it's doing that again and again, and it's annoying you. It's like, why doesn't it get it? So what you do is you just put the mistakes that it's making, just put it in a .md file, right? And then ask it to refer to it whenever you know that you're going to make a change related to that bug that it previously occurred. Right? So it teaches the AI to learn from its mistakes. It's not really teaching, like you're not encoding that in the model, but you at least have something that it can refer to. And you're kind of avoiding deja vu bugs, which take a lot of our time. So yeah, an example you can, so there are these two examples. I'll actually give you an example that I used. So the way you use function tools is different for, it changes based on the model, and the way you define tools also changes based on the agentic, like the framework that you're using, right? So while I was using ADK, Claude was not doing that correctly. So I just like put it in an MD that this is how you define a tool, and you use a tool in ADK, and then it just worked like a charm. And it was actually taking a lot of my time, because I was expecting it to work seamlessly, and it wasn't working. So it's a pattern that yeah, really saves you time. All right. So this is an example of how the Scratchpad and reflection pattern may work together, where you put it in the context, you put like some do's and don'ts across the repository, or you can put some do's and don'ts based on your tech stack. So for Fast API, these are some do's and don'ts. GCP, some do's and don'ts, or like Next.js. Yeah, just an example. All right, the last pattern is the clean slate pattern. So this is very simple. And let me tell you why we need it. So we all know that irrelevant information will lead to faulty reasoning. So rather than putting irrelevant information, or like rather than putting information that's, let's say, related to some other feature, I would highly encourage you to just like have a clean slate when you start developing a new feature. So for every feature, just start a new chat in your IDE, or yeah, just like bring over context that's absolutely needed for this feature, but nothing more. Because what happens is, when you give more context than needed, this leads to model overthinking. So there are a few papers on model overthinking. What happens is you're favoring internal thinking over getting external information. So what the model is doing is, instead of asking you for more information, or instead of seeking more information through some of the tools it has, like web search, or you know, calling an MCP server, what it's doing is it's like kind of hallucinating while it's thinking, and then because of that irrelevant context. So that's why the clean slate pattern is like really important. So yeah, basically when you start a new task, just build the context from scratch, or just carry over only the important parts of the context, and you already have those .md files, right? So per feature, you can have your own context. So yeah, I call it the clean slate and carryover pattern. It's because you're carrying over some of the context as well from your previous files that you might have created. So I hope the repo structure now makes more sense, because you have you know, all of these .md files. This is all an overkill. Like if you use all of these, it's just to demonstrate the possibilities. Usually you would use a subset of these, like a very small subset of these. All right, so hopefully this gives you some example, like an example of a workflow, or like some a mixture of systems that work. While you're building your own workflow, I would highly encourage you to look at these properties of the workflow that it should improve. You should be able to improve it iteratively. It should be well documented, repeatable, and yeah, some of the implementation related you know, principles are having, you know, really well structured repo, documented decisions, trade-offs, everything context managed, and then you also make sure that the feedback is documented. And yeah, I mean, yeah, feel free to take a screenshot of this and build your own workflow. And you can reach out to me while you're doing that. I would be very happy to have a discussion and to learn more from you guys as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Tanya, for such an incredible session. I think we are all clear about the idea that we have to work with AI, not against it. So we'll open floor for questions. We'll take 2 questions. Mike, please.
Hi. So I just wanted to get an idea. It was really interesting, all the content there. When you're working, putting together these directories and the documents, how do you characterize what you're doing? Are you kind of teaching a sort of naive savant how to do stuff? Are you kind of dumping your way of working, you know, down, this is how I want you to think about the problem? Or is it like, you know, getting stuff done? It's just like, this is a way of organizing activity. I mean, going a bit meta, how would you approach teaching, how would you approach capturing the information there? Does that make sense as a question?
Yeah, so if I can repeat this back to you, like how am I treating the AI at that point, right? Like while I'm communicating with it.
Why have you put those particular things there? Is that something that's your way of working, or you think that's something that the AI doesn't do very well itself?
So I think, the reason is sort of empirical, like this has worked really well while I've done it. The other thing is, like we know that AI can do certain things really well. So depending on what those things are, for example, it has worked really well for designing certain types of systems, right? So that's one of the reasons that I kind of, sort of spar with it once I'm done designing, right? So that's like one of the reasons you can get AI to put together a system design for you, right? But then what I've seen is that sometimes it just over-engineers that design as well. And that's why I say that you first design it yourself and then you get it to attack it. Because AI is really good at, if you really ask it to critique something, it will critique it. Like you just have to have a good way to ask it, I guess like good prompt. It can be a sycophant as well. So yeah, it just depends. So this workflow has worked well. The other thing is if I ask it to do everything together, it doesn't work. But if I give it like really well-crafted tasks, it works well. So what I've done is broken a workflow of an engineer into smaller parts and then showed you like, okay, this is where you can use AI. This is where now you can use AI. While maintaining kind of autonomy over the code base, or like at least understanding over the code base, right? Because if you want to update it, right now we're not at that point where we can 100% trust that the updates that are going to be there are going to be perfect, right? So that's the reason it's designed this way.
Sure. So that's why it's really interesting to see these are the things that you've hit and you've thought you had to call out as things that need addressing. So
yes,
I guess there's a lot of you in that view as well of how you've come to do that.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Me and a few others as well, like a few others that I've chatted to, people who are like either in a similar job role at different other companies. So I've like kind of brought those learnings as well. And this is like I've presented this talk at another place as well. So someone kind of commented, and then we got to chatting about this. So it's like a culmination of not just me, but like a few others, some of my mentors as well. So
sure.
Yeah.
So thanks. It's really fascinating. So thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll take one more question from. Maybe we give a chance to someone on the top if you have any questions. If not, yeah, I think you can go ahead with your questions.
Hi. Okay, the question is, how do you manage your prompt? The context is we come from traditionals like waterfalls, Azure, Scrum, Kanban, right? You got a question?
Yeah. So what's my like?
How do you manage your prompts or requirement changes?
Oh, how do I manage my prompts?
Yeah.
Right now I'm just versioning them in Git. It's like, just doing that. And the way we work is 2-week sprints. So yeah, that's pretty much it. We don't do traditional project management. So our projects are 3 to 4 months max. We just manage them on our own. We have a task list, and we do everything using Git. So GitLab, that's what we're using.
So basically it's something like epics, sprint, and user stories?
It depends on the project, actually. Some of the projects we don't require it. Some of them we do. Mm-hmm. We also sometimes use Jira, but that depends on the customer. Because I work with customers a lot, so I work in Google Cloud. We also use the customer suite to do some of these things. Like whatever the customer is using, we just use that.
All right, yeah. Got it. Thank you. Perfect.
Wow, that's an awesome question. So is there any more question? We can take one more if you are.
Your prompts that you put in, and also the ones that you put in for version control, do you have any like key phrases that you like to use to try and get something out of the agent?
Yeah, I use must a lot, and then this works really well if you're like shouting at the agent to get something done, and then the agent starts shouting back. That's when you know it's done. You're like, yeah, throwing some really bad words at it, and then it's done.
Okay, that's a very unique way. I think
Also,
we must show
XML
that.
tags also work really well. XML tags work really well. Yeah, in the prompts.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, that's okay. Is there any more questions following up? Oh, we have someone from the top. Finally, we have a question from the top. Oh, I think it's not on.
Yeah.
Try checking it.
Sorry, can you?
Yeah, you can try that, Mac.
So I'll be pretty specific to the technology that you presented, being Fast API, right? So Fast API, it's kind of evolving really, as the name is kind of evolving really fast, and some of the syntax that they release, they're not pretty good examples on the docs as well, and you don't find, code snippets, the latest code snippets. So whenever you're working on some of the new projects, and there are not a lot of references for the new features that Fast API ships. So what do you do in those sort of situations? Like, do you carry on with the deprecated versions, or like what's like how do you go on with it?
Yeah. So that's a good question, because that's happening to a lot of the libraries that we've been using. So what I do is I'll just create a smaller version myself. So for example, I want to show the model that, okay, this is how you implement this specific thing, and just put it as a sample in my repo or as an example.py file, and then just use that. So yeah, kind of bite the bullet, make an example yourself, and then go on, unless you find a great example or implementation. Usually I do find an implementation somewhere, like either within the company or someone open source, like for Fast API, someone already wrote it. But if that is not the case, you just write it yourself and then go on. Yeah.
Alrighty, looks like we have a lot of questions. Tanya is here, so you guys can obviously ask her questions after the session.
Okay.
We have a little token of love for Tanya from GDG Sydney family.
Thank you.
Yes, you deserve a very big round of applause. Thank you for today's session, Tanya.
Thanks. Thank you so much.